I'm so glad that this has happened. I was thinking about this the other day, how this happened really spontaneously, this podcast really. In fact, it happened pretty much, actually on the third anniversary of my being away from New Zealand. And I was in a very reflective mood. And we actually got some concrete ideas on how to formulate this. So that was actually a very special moment, I feel. And for me, something I was reflecting on is the fact that being away from New Zealand for 3 years and counting now has given me a more balanced perspective. I think it's fair to say that when I left New Zealand, I was going through some ups and downs, and my head was in a bit of a spin, and I was just wanting to get away. And lots of frustrations and so on. And I feel that it's been an interesting journey for myself around finding balance. And I guess this is why we've decided that this could be one of the themes perhaps for our podcast. But I'd love to hear from you. What's your take on balance and your journey around this?
First of all, I'd like to reflect that, yes, I mirror your sentiments around, and it's awesome that you're coming to a more balanced view about New Zealand. And that's exactly my path that I felt that I needed to resolve in my journey. Perhaps I also made it a value of mine, and balance. Might be because I'm a Libra. I joke about that. But the thing I feel that in incorporating a lot of my own views about Chinese philosophy, for example, balance comes up time and time again as a guiding force around a good way of life. Particularly because I set on this path on Tai Chi, and Tai Chi is, as people know, as you know, is a martial art that looks somewhat like a dance, that you do in a cool dance that you do in the park. But the purpose around that is to balance a lot of the factors around strength and yielding in a way that it creates a more economical way an efficient way of moving forward with your energy. So the whole purpose around is longevity. Because if you use force too much, then you're going to burn out. If you are too yielding, then you're just going to, you'll be a pushover. So how do we balance the two in a martial art? And a martial art is probably the best way to express that, because you're trying to get maximum results without using too much energy. So as a philosophy, it applies to life too. And I've been very, 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 very interested in that concept in itself, and I vibe with it, and I'm just like, well, how do I then apply it, what I learned from that martial art, into my daily life? And then I'm also very inspired by nature, which is exactly how the Taoist philosophy that Tai Chi stems from is based upon. It's the observation and study of nature, and how nature has a way of balancing itself. Whether you want to say this intelligence or, there's a certain order to it. There's a certain order.
Absolutely.
Whatever goes up must come down. Whatever goes down eventually might come up. So I think it's just what we want to call one of the laws of reality. And that's just how our reality is constructed right now, as far as we can observe. So I'm thinking, well, it makes sense. It makes sense from that angle. Then there's more to add on to the whole idea of a balanced perspective or balanced journey that I I guess I'll share, and that's where I find that the middle path. The middle path is really um, in my view, probably the wisest path, and it's not really to highlight that it's a fence-sitting position. It's more like a position where you are in the middle. You're centered. You're rational. You're not drawn any other ways with your emotions. You can call it equanimous, but you also are very aware about the two polarized extremes that are going on.
Yes.
And you're observing these two things. You're not engulfed in one point of view where you're completely ignorant of the other. You actually know, you see what's going on. And therefore, you can have this center perspective and going, okay, well, is this beneficial, or is this destructive? And therefore, wisdom can result from the greater awareness. And so I believe my path in balance is actually to know as much as I can, as many perspectives as I can, to draw a reasonable position to go, yeah, I get you both. And maybe I can find commonalities within the two sides. What are you actually striving for? What are you trying to achieve? And then come to a reasonable path where it is a win-win situation for everyone. So yeah, that's my share on balance.
Boom! I love it. That was that was a great dive into that. I think balance is really key to a lot of aspects of having, a well-led life, if you like, one that strays from the extremities, perhaps, because it's quite easy to get drawn emotionally, perhaps, into certain topics and certain themes, and you can feel yourself being pulled in all these directions. And this is where you feel off balance and off center. So really the middle way is really about being grounded. And I think this is something that for me, I really reflected upon during my first Vipassana retreat. This is where, as you know, too, you sit for hours on end. And if you don't get your balance right, if you don't get your posture right, it can actually add more pain and suffering, certainly during those aditana sessions of absolute stillness. So for me, this was actually my first entry point into exploring what it means to have balance in one's life and how to apply this in various aspects. And it's fair to say that this is an ongoing journey, because something I've only just really embarked upon for myself very recently, in fact, just pre-lockdown, is trying to get more balance in my life around the mental and the physical. So as you probably know, I've always invested very heavily into being as mentally fit as I could possibly can be. So I guess that's part of the reason I'm on this PhD journey as well. But I've realized now that I've neglected my physical health to a large extent, and that's why I'm trying to fix this now. I'm going to the gym, I'm doing this intermittent fasting diet, and I'm watching my portion sizes, and I'm just changing my relationship with food and nutrition and sustenance and all that. And I think I have to say, in large part, this is also due to you being this positive influence on my life, because you've always been about this balance, and you've always practiced Tai Chi, and I think you're certainly further ahead, if you like, in this journey around finding balance. So having your perspectives, I think, is so incredibly valuable. So thanks, bud. Just wanted to put this out to you.
And where I appreciate your input in this is that you have always delved into the extremes of life, right? I actually relate to that as well, but I think you have managed to implement that a lot to a larger extent. Like I do recall your journey in politics, for example, and of course I'll lead that in for you to talk about your experience with the extremes.
Oh, bro! Wow, yeah, that part of my life, huh? Wow, yeah. that was a chapter in my life that I'll let me just label that 2001 to 2012. This is, a dozen years of me being very charged and actually, to be honest, quite angry, even, and cynical and perspective about the world. I mean, I still have those elements today. I don't think I'm fully cured of that necessarily, but certainly I'm more aware of this when this arises, and I would reach out to you and be like, "Hey, bro, I need some balanced perspective on this type thing." Especially when I get into yeah, I don't know what you want to call it, but they get into a bit of a funk where I just feel like humanity's doomed, So, I try and steer clear of that. Yeah, I guess my political journey has been on the far left and far right of New Zealand politics anyway. I was initially involved actually with a socialist group from 2001 to 2002, and then I joined the Green Party, and I became involved as a member and eventually as an official. And actually I was involved all the way until 2008. Then I had a change of perspective. I shifted right to X. I think it shocked a lot of people, lost a lot of friends, whatever, that's fine. And I just felt really drawn to the extremes for whatever reason. I guess it's because I've always been quite an extreme person in certain things. I feel like the extremities offer something quite exciting.
You're a boundary pusher.
Boundary pusher, I like that. Love it. Yeah, absolutely. I love exploring the fringes. I don't fear that. In fact, it's just always drawn me. The unknown, the radical, the mysterious, or whatever. And so, yeah, the boundaries. And so I certainly explored the political boundaries, and I realized that actually that's either side has something to say, certainly about a concept I'm very passionate about: freedom. And I feel like the left has something to say about freedom, the right has something to say about freedom, but they kind of miss each other's points and they miss the big picture. And so I guess from 2012 onwards, I stepped away from politics and decided that I need to continue this journey of discovery in terms of how can we better society, if you like. But I felt like the political route wasn't the way to go anymore, and certainly taking the extreme path isn't the way to go. So I guess for me, this was the first step, if you like, along the journey, and then I guess this is why it's explored Vipassana meditation. So yeah, that was the commencement of my journey. So,
And hence I think we vibe now, mostly on trying to deconstruct the whole idea of balance by inputting as much perspectives as you can. And so for me, I find on my journey, I facilitate the men's group, which you're part of. So as you know, so we welcome the whole context where different men have different perspectives that we can input into the mix, and through that we can find out more information. So we're not cutting ourselves short of like opinions. Actually, opinions are great, and through that we can get mind blown with like, oh, I never seen it from this angle before. I've never seen things from the other angle before, and therefore I can really grow as a result of understanding the big picture. The big picture. When you came out the title, Balance Purpose, and you summed it up in 3 different ways, which I want to invite you to talk about. But I like it, and purpose for me, I resonate with that because it's almost a very there's a purposeful meaningfulness or direction. There's a direction to this. And I feel that's what I'll classify under a masculine trait, for especially in a men's group. We're purpose driven. We want to go towards something is meaningful, something like we can mission about. So to mission about balance, I feel that's going to be a really good path to be on. And as we all say, life is a journey. So if this journey towards a balanced purpose, I really vibe with that. Yeah, but tell me more about how you came up with this balanced purpose thing. I think it's great.
Oh, that's right. I haven't even shared the backstory about this with you, have I? All I shared with you was that I had this literal eureka moment where it came to me while I was having this ice cold shower, as I normally do, even more so in summertime now. And I literally jumped out of the shower and went, "Oh yes, of course!" And I shared this message with you, and I stood there stark cold naked while I left you this message. But I felt like I had to put that out there, and it's there, I guess, for posterity now. But there it is. It's on the record. And it was in the moment, so this was me, I guess trying to harness that presence, yeah. So that happened. I actually have to acknowledge you, Bud, for actually being the inspiration for this, because it was actually deepening, recent conversations with you around, your involvement with men's work and so on and so forth, that actually got me. It reignited in me an interest in Jungian psychology. And this is something that I've always been somewhat interested in, certainly when I began my delve into spiritual explorations and so forth. Jung definitely pops up because he's such an influential figure there. But he's also a very controversial figure because some of his theories are fringe. But as we both know, we are both drawn to the fringes. And that's why we've both been drawn to Jung and his worldview and his psychology. And this is certainly what initially got me interested in Jungian psychology. And then when I began my academic journey, I found myself somewhat inadvertently, perhaps, straying away from my interest in Jungian psychology, because in academic circles, to an extent, it's fair to say that he's not necessarily always recognized, respected even for some of his views that are considered new age, fringe, perhaps even pseudoscientific and so forth. And so he gets a little bit ignored and overlooked. But in recent months even, I've actually found myself delving back into Jungian psychology again, and I feel like there's a lot there that has to be explored, and I feel like giving a voice to this. And it's fair to say that actually part of my journey around getting involved in this podcast and also with my research interest is the fact that actually I'd love to bridge the gap, if you like, between the scientific and the spiritual. And I think there is a need for that, and I feel like this is a journey that we all need to be on together, because there's so much we can contribute to this. And I don't actually see these two aspects necessarily being opposing at all. I do feel like they are both wings of an eagle that are necessary to flap in unison in order to soar to new heights. And I think unless and until we reach that stage, I feel like we will always be hampered in our understanding of the world. In fact, Nikola Tesla himself said that the day that the scientific community gives as much credence to the immaterial world, so to speak, as the material world, we will find ourselves making leaps and bounds within a decade, even far more than we've ever made the previous centuries. Right? Something to that effect. And Tesla certainly was a fringe dweller and a fringe explorer, and I think he's a huge inspiration to all of us, and certainly Jung too. And so I guess that for me was really the inspiration to all of this. So yeah, thanks for being a part of this inspiration. But
I love how you talk about the two wings. You need two wings to fly, unless you're a kiwi bird. It's different.
And then maybe just waddle about.
Well. In the case of kiwi birds, you need two legs. You need two legs to waddle around. Yeah.
That's true. You still need balance. Yeah, that's true. That's true. Boom.
Yeah. Boom. But yeah, you can achieve so much when the two sides work together. And I extremely resonate with the whole idea that there are truths in science, and also, or let's call it that category, science, and there's a lot of truths in spirituality too. But where they coincide is where you can find the common truths, and with a common truth, then boom, we are onto something. I mean, of course, we try to discard the things that are, like they're fluffing around all the rough edges of each world, as we know there are problems. But I think that's the editing process when we find a common truth, then we realize all the extraneous stuff maybe don't matter as much. And that's why we need the two wings to fly towards the light, truth.
Absolutely.
The other thing about Jung, I'll say in brief, is, he talks about the mask, the persona, and he talks about the shadow, two sides of personality of the person, one that we show and one that we hold inside. But to become fully integrated and to become fully one person, it's to almost reconcile both sides. And that's the path towards authenticity, I believe. So the authenticity in itself is kind of the middle way within the person themselves, consciousness. So yeah, a lot to say about balance and the values around that. And mind you, we practice Vipassana and they call it the middle path. And then we talk about the Taoist principles of Eastern philosophy. We got the yin and the yang, and how they're two parts of the same whole, and how they interact and balance each other out. I think philosophies like that can add value to society because they've been around for so long, and that's part of our heritage. This is pretty amazing. So the more we talk about it, the more we can also, elevate our sense of identity in terms of this whole topic too. So I think it's very, very, very relevant. I'm really excited by this.
Absolutely. And in terms of purpose, let me just to add that perhaps this is where the limitations of science do show, because science really doesn't tell us anything about what is the purpose of human life. If anything, the meaning of life is to give life meaning. That's up to you to designate and decide and determine for yourself. And so for a lot of people, this means seeking spiritual paths, perhaps delving deep into, say, religiosity even. And for others, they find their purpose perhaps in simply building a career for themselves, and so on and so forth. So there are many different ways that you can find a purpose for yourself, and obviously there is no one right answer for this, but certainly the desire to lead a meaningful and purposeful life is really what makes us at the very core so uniquely human. And I think what's really exciting about what we have in store for future explorations on our episodes is the fact that we would like to balance really both wings of this plane that we are going to be releasing out into the ether. And we need to acknowledge that both these wings actually, in a way, define the threads that we're weaving into our discussion. So that you alluded to the three themes, if you like, that are interlocked into the name. And so finding balance on purpose, which is the tagline, is really acknowledging firstly that they both exist and they both need to be given equal recognition, if you like. And finding balance on purpose means to deliberately look for balance, and so adding purpose to balance, and also we have to add balance to purpose. So all three aspects need to be acknowledged and only honored. And I'd like to think that this is what we strive for with our discussions here.